Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Something to Complain About. I'm T, and I am here with my partner A. A, how are you today?
Good, T. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Um, the weather's kind of changing,
Yeah,
and so it's always wondering when that first snow is going to happen.
I don't think I'm ready for the first snow.
No, I don't think so either.
And you haven't, but you actually have kind of a more difficult situation when you get a first snow there. Having lived in your city for a decent number of years, and now not living there, I can say that snows are scary in Omaha because people drive like morons. Do you find that to be true too?
It is very true. For whatever reason, the first snowfall of every year is like no one's ever driven in snow before. And
Yes.
then when we get the first rainfall of the spring,
Yeah.
then everybody carries on like they've never driven in rain before.
It is the most strange phenomenon. I realize I've
It
only lived in a few places in my life, but the drivers in Nebraska, especially in Omaha, are just, and we can say this because we are transplants. We did not grow up there. We came there to go to college. We both stayed there for quite a while. You're still there. I'm not. But goodness gracious, just I don't even. I mean, I used to literally. I was telling you this before we started recording a little bit. Like, I would stay home when I knew it was the first snowfall if I absolutely didn't have to go to work, because there were more accidents on that first day of a first snowfall,
yes,
and I would have to sit back and be like, we had snow last year. It wasn't even that long ago that we had snow. How did y'all forget to drive on the snow? But
we
Omaha
do.
drivers forget to drive on the snow.
We do. And
They do.
what's fascinating is that so many people in Omaha are natives. So
Yeah.
it's not like we're talking about transplants from Southern California or Florida or
Yeah.
Texas. We're talking about people who have lived in Omaha their entire lives. It has become a running joke
Hmm.
in my house where my husband or I, we will come home from even just running errands, and one of the first things we'll say is, "You sure do have a lot of stupid drivers in your neighborhood."
Every time I come to Omaha, um, of course, I rent a car. I leave the airport. I'm on my way to the hotel, and I call T, and I'm like already just rattling off a bitch storm because I'm like, these people are crazy. I'm gonna die. Like,
Yeah,
he's like, you lived there for so long. How do you not know this already? I'm like, I know it, but that doesn't mean I can't complain about it when I'm here, because
it,
nobody knows how to
that is.
merge. Nobody knows how to wait for a stoplight.
Oh, and
Nope.
nobody
Nobody knows
knows how
anything.
to.
It's like they forget.
So, so last week I went to an event with Little T
Yeah.
to Jocelyn Castle,
Beautiful
and
place.
again, a beautiful place. I lost my ever loving mind
Yeah. That's about right.
in the parking lot there.
Yeah.
And it all goes back to Omaha is it's a big town to where
Yep.
we do get some traffic jams, we do have some
Yeah.
traffic situations. You can go somewhere and there's a crowd, but nobody knows how to behave. Whereas if you go to Chicago or New York or DC or LA, even Denver, like people know
Yeah.
how to line up, people know how to move in traffic to keep the traffic going, even if it's slow. But,
Yeah.
like, for example, I pulled into the parking lot of the castle. And of course, there's people walking frickin' everywhere because nothing means nothing, including, this is a driveway. And so there's like three open parking places. But the woman in front of me, in the vehicle in front of me, decided she wanted a particular parking place that wasn't yet open. Now, here's the kicker. It was one farthest away from where we wanted to go.
Oh,
Okay. And all she had to do was turn her head to the right, and she would have seen one, two, three open parking places. Now, and of course, she parks her car right in the middle of the lot, so nobody can overtake her.
of course.
And
This is
for
why God invented
10,
horns.
10 minutes,
She
she's
sat there.
waiting for a young family with a stroller and a wagon because she decided that was the parking spot she wanted and not the others. And I almost got out of my car to tap on her window and be like, if you would look right, turn your head right, all of us that are waiting here, we could already be parked. Then I'm like, no, because then that's how you get shot. And then all of a sudden I'd be the bad guy because I got out of the car first. Um, but it's that
Yep.
level of stupid
Hmm.
that and just that lack of that situational awareness, because although these things happen in Omaha, it's not an every day. So people aren't looking like what people tend to do, like in a larger city where you do have kind of that situational awareness and you realize it isn't all about you. And that, like in Chicago, someone will knock you out of the way or lay
Yep.
on the horn and not think anything of it.
Yeah.
Um,
That's
but in Omaha would have been in the evening news. So we sat and we waited.
I would have had to honk.
And
This is what I struggle with when I come back is because now that I live in Chicago and I've gotten used to driving in Chicago, we honk at everything. Right?
right,
Like nobody is waiting for your stupid ass to do something. Like you have 30 that you don't even have 30 seconds. You have 3 seconds to figure out what you're doing and do it. Or if you're not doing it, we're going to honk on your like we're going to get you out of our way because we're not going
right.
to sit in a parking lot for 10 minutes and wait to do something. Like that's ridiculous. It's also incredibly discourteous, and that's the thing that surprises me is because we like to hear this is a tangent. We like to hear about Nebraska nice. Like everybody wants to pretend like
It's not.
Nebraskans are nice. Yeah, some Nebraskans are
So
nice, but like they're not considerate when they're driving. They're poorly
there's
educated drivers. Like they don't drive well. They're not confident in how they drive, and they don't care about people around them. Right? Like in Chicago, nobody cares about anybody. They just want you to get out of the way so they can get where they're going. But everybody has the same goal here, right? Everybody wants to get where
no,
you're going as fast as you
I
can. Boom.
and I don't think I mean I think the sense of entitlement
Yes.
is very, very different. But then again, also in Omaha, you see a lot of people
Hmm.
from the immediate rural areas coming to Omaha
Coming into
quite a
town.
bit
Yep.
because Omaha is their big city experience. And so there's a lot of issues with that. And people who technically live in Omaha, but they live out on the 250th block and very seldom drive into
The actual
the
city.
ci- the actual city.
Yeah.
That I don't think you always see in a larger city like Chicago. You're not going to see grandpa and grandma from rural Illinois driving down
Not
the
usually.
Dan Ryan Expressway. Well, or they wouldn't last very long, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
um yeah, it's just it's very special. And there is I hate that in the Nebraska nice. um it's one thing to be like to smile at somebody and say hi, but this is
Yeah.
probably about the Omaha is probably one of the rudest places I've ever been.
Hmm.
Just in general, um just general demeanor, not
Yeah. And
even
that,
just driving, but just if you're asking somebody for directions
yeah.
or you're doing small talk at the cash register, being able to go out and make new friends, not
Yeah.
very, like people will smile at you, they'll wave, they'll say hi, but
Right.
there's a huge difference between nice and kind. People don't,
Yeah, this is
um,
very true.
yeah.
This is
It's
very
just
true.
that it's just that kind of superficial.
Mhm.
Like we have a neighbor kid who she has one compliment that she gives people. I like your hair. So the first 5 times you hear it, you go, oh, well, that's nice. Hi, I like your hair. And then it's like she's now 3 years older. The vocabulary is no bigger and it's still, hi, I like your, you know, that's Nebraska nice. Like you get two or three things and then there's nothing beyond beyond that. Um,
Which is
and I
kind of
believe
how
this
they
child,
drive too.
right. So, and I believe this child is a native Omahan. So my point stands.
It does.
Yeah.
I mean,
So,
when I moved to Omaha from the farm town, right? Like having learning how to drive there was a challenge because we did not have a city anywhere near that size that
okay.
we could drive in.
So, so let me ask you this. Let me ask you this. Because we were the same age when we took driver's ed. I think we were both 14, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So that would have been like 1991,
Oh yeah.
two,
Probably two or yeah.
one?
Yeah.
Between eighth grade and freshman year in high school, right?
Yeah.
That's how old I was. Okay.
Yeah.
So whatever year that was, 90,
It
91.
was 91. Yeah, cuz we
Okay.
graduated in 95. So, yeah.
Okay. Okay. So we both learned at age 14.
Mhm.
Um, we both took driver's ed in a very small town. Your town, of
Yep.
course, was a bit smaller than mine. But where did you go for your quote unquote big city driving experience?
Well, um two places basically. We went to Wapaton, North Dakota, which is about 15,000 people. Um,
Ooh.
that was, I think, the nearest little city with with stoplights, which is part of like what you had to do. And then we did at one point drive to Fargo, which of course was probably 100,000 people, roughly somewhere in that range, maybe 90,000, 100,000 people when I was graduate, when I was that age. It is now quite a bit bigger, but well, I mean, for North Dakota standards, it's quite a bit bigger. I mean, it's not for everybody's standards,
Mm.
but when we got to Fargo, the driver's ed teacher took over in Fargo because he didn't think any of us were comfortable driving in Fargo. I wish he
Oh.
wouldn't have. I wish he would have actually made us drive in Fargo because, I mean, Fargo was busy enough. It would have been good practice, but we had to be able to drive around Wapaton for an hour, like as part of our driver's ed experience. So we'd go there and he would just tell us, gonna go to this stoplight and turn right, then you're gonna go this one and turn left, and then you're gonna go that one and you're gonna make a
Mhm.
U-turn, and like, so like that was fine. And in Fargo, like we literally were going to Fargo because he was also the football coach and he needed to pick up some stuff at the sports store for the football players. So like we got just south of Fargo, and he had one of us pull, whoever was driving. I think it was the girl that I was partnered with.
So,
She just pulled off onto the off ramp. It was still a country road out there. We were not quite into Fargo, and then he took over driving, and then he drove around Fargo, and then when he got outside of Fargo again, I drove the rest of the way home. So it was mostly just driving out in the country is what we were doing.
so,
But
so you
Wapaton was our
never,
biggest experience.
so you never actually drove in Fargo then?
Not until after
Oh.
I had my license.
Oh. Now, see, we went to, I mean, the town I grew up in, hey, we had two stoplights. We were rocking. We had two,
You were.
baby. I
We
know.
did not.
Um, but we went, there was a city called Salina
Yeah.
about 70 miles away, 75 miles away. And so, and my PE, Well, my PE teacher from when I was in elementary school was also my driver's ed teacher. So there was like some kind of a trend going on there. Um,
Same for
but
me.
he did have us all practice driving on the interstate.
Yep.
And then we all did practice driving in Salina, which at that time had maybe about 60,000 people,
Yeah. That'd been
because
good.
he wanted us to practice driving on 2-lane roads,
Hmm.
4-lane roads, I guess, 2 lanes going the same direction, and then with the divide.
Like a
So,
freeway. Yeah.
and then, but even in town,
Yep.
but then my next big city driving experience was driving up to Omaha for the summer welcome, summer orientation
Yeah.
at our alma mater.
Yeah.
And my mom did this on purpose. She timed it so that we would be hitting Omaha during rush hour.
That was nice.
And we swapped out drivers about 20 miles outside of town, about halfway between here and
Oh,
Lincoln. And she's like, "You're the one that wants to move to Omaha, so you're going to have to learn how to drive in
that's a little passive
rush hour."
aggressive.
And I know, because she literally white knuckled it the entire way. But I'm glad she did that,
Hmm.
because she could have totally babied me and
Yeah.
been like, "Well, you can, you'll be moving up here next month and you can figure it out." It was like, "Oh no." And we're probably both gonna die because you're a crap driver, but we're gonna do this anyway. And you learn fast.
You have to.
But here's the thing, I never, well, and then Omaha is such a, we're talking about Omaha drivers and stuff. Um, I do not anymore. I do not like driving for as much as I wanted to learn how to drive. I do
Yep.
not like driving, and I do not like driving in any cities. So
That's
like when I
fair.
travel across country, and like nowadays, like my husband will just drive, which is fine. But like when I did a cross country trip with my mom and my sister, my mom basically drove us through every city along the way. I think I drove us through Raleigh, Durham, North Carolina,
Sure.
and
Yeah.
that was it. But otherwise, I refuse to drive. And like when I go to see you in Chicago, um, I will I'll I'll either hoof it or I'll take public transport. I hate driving that much, and I get so nervous. Even when I flew out to LA several years ago, I paid to take a cab because my brother was like, "Did you want to rent a car?" And I'm like, "Do you want to drive in LA? Because I'm not driving. So you're going to have to be our driver. I'll be your navigator, and then we'll have Em in the back seat pointing out every random thing."
Yeah.
Um, and then he was like, "No, I'm good. We can we'll just And we took public transport there too. Um, 210 would not recommend. 2 out of 10 would not recommend public transport
When we went to
there.
LA a couple years back, we did drive. We drove all the way to LA and drove in LA, and it honestly wasn't really any worse than driving here, right? Like it's
Yeah,
what it is what it is. But the thing that's really crazy for me is like when I got to Omaha in 1995, right? My dad and I came down to look at the school, and the thing that if it for those of you who are listening, if you've never been to Omaha, this is going to sound weird, but everybody who knows Omaha will know exactly what I'm talking about. There are a bunch of one-way streets downtown and near the university, and they are sometimes one way at different times in different directions. And so you
yes,
don't always know, like having if you're not from there and you don't know what you're looking for, it's very easy to turn down the wrong way on a one way. And we did that and we ended up somehow managing to get into that There used to be an Amico, like a gas station right there in 30th and Dodge. We ended up somehow managing
Yes.
to get in there
Yep.
before the traffic got to us, but we were both. He was a little white knuckled. I was a little shaky, and I remember when they dropped me off and left me with my car at the school for the semester. It was like it took a lot to just be like, okay, I'm going to go to the Target down the street. I'm going to go to the Albertsons down Saddle Creek. I'm going to go
Yes.
right. And then as I got more used to it, it was okay. But Omaha is a very special place to learn how to drive because Omaha is the way that the streets are laid out and the one ways and the back and forth and the whatever. Like it's almost like somebody was tripping on LSD when they laid out the street plan and tried to figure out how to make traffic flow, and they've never done a
Well,
great job of sort of fixing any of that. So it's a unique, it's one of the weirdest cities I've ever driven in. I'm used to it now, but when I go back or when I come back and am there for a few days, by the time I get 5 minutes away from the airport, I want to shoot people, even though I won't. I do have to prevent myself from honking because here in Chicago we honk at everybody, and I'm afraid if I honk at somebody or the wrong somebody in Omaha, somebody's going to pull a gun. So I don't honk at people, but it's hard not to.
yeah.
But
It's
it was even hard when I lived there. Like I would scream at people because they wouldn't pay attention merging onto Dodge, right? Or whatever it was. So like that's difficult, but and I guess I didn't realize you took driver's ed at 14. Like
I
I
did.
thought we were sort of special because like now the rules are different. Now where I grew up, you have to be 16
Mm.
to get your license and get your
And
permit, but we
that
did not.
may and that may be so. I mean, I remember, and this may be true for you, but the big kind of excuse, if you want to say,
Yeah.
for uh driving permits at 14, like we couldn't get a license until we were 16, but we had permits for 2 years,
Okay.
was the farm kids, helping with
Yeah.
harvest and things like that.
Yeah.
Um, and
So
then there
we
were
were a
some
little
new
different than that.
there were some nuances, like you were supposed to always have a driver with a license in your car or in your vehicle when you drove. Not that anybody followed that. And then, but then, like, you could drive to school or to work, but had to be the most direct route.
And during the day,
Yeah.
maybe. So like
Yeah. Yeah. Like before 8 p.m., like at 8 a.m.
yeah,
to 8 p.m. Like
we
anybody followed that.
we had a ours was a little bit weirder. So we took driver's ed kind of like you did in between 8th grade and ninth grade. Our PE teacher was our PE teacher for the whole school. So like my school was K through 12 in one building, which I know people are probably going to think is weird. But he was our PE teacher. He was our like we called it Phi Ed. I don't know. Everybody else in the world calls it PE, I think, but we called it Phi Ed. He was our PE
Why?
teacher,
Why would you call it FIAD?
physical education. That's just how they abbreviated it on our schedules was Phi Ed. So that's how we talked about it.
They
Um,
didn't say phys ed.
nope.
I'd heard phys ed.
Phys ed made sense. I just whatever.
North,
Right? We're
North, Dak-
special.
no, North Dakota is such a special place.
It was a special place. It still is a
It
special place.
was a
Um,
special, yeah.
so he was our PE teacher. He was our health teacher. He was our basketball coach and our football coach. And I think that was it. Super nice guy. Like if I ran into him today, he'd probably still know my name. Yeah, he was a fantastically supportive teacher. Um, really cool. But we took it. We were paired with one other person. The law in North Dakota at the time was you could get your permit on your 14th birthday, and you could then test for your license 90 days later. So
Oh, really?
most of my classmates had their licenses when between 14 and 15. So my birthday of course is at the end of April. My parents, my dad, not so much my mom, but my dad was like, you have to drive on your permit for the winter. Like you can't get your license until you've driven on your permit all winter, right? Like, because winters are bad in North Dakota. They may not be as bad anymore, but they were bad back then. And he literally, like, we had to have somebody in the car with a license. If you were a permitted driver, you were required to have a licensed driver with you. If you were caught without it, your permit would be suspended. Like, it was a big deal. So we never drove without somebody else who had a license. The other rule there that was funny was if you had
Okay.
another teenager in the car with you, they needed to have had their license for at least a year, or you both got in trouble, like points, lost your permit, whatever.
You know,
Um,
I love how there were all of these little catches and exceptions and things, but like nobody would follow through. I would be driving around town with my friends on my learner's permit and wave at the cops, and they'd wave
so
back. I
this
mean,
is the difference.
everybody knew.
This is the difference between the size of our small towns, right? 400 people in my town, and how many in your town?
We had about 2,000, I think,
Yeah,
when I was growing up.
everybody in my town knew everybody and what time they took a crap in the morning. So if you passed the cop knew what grade you were in, and
Yeah, I mean, so did the cops.
so did the county
uh,
sheriff, and they would pull you over. So
Oh, see, ours didn't care, but I tell
ours
you
did.
what,
They didn't
um,
have anything else to do.
it
That's all they had to do
well,
was chase high school
n-
students.
neither did mine, but this is where relationships come in.
Sure, we didn't. It didn't
And
work
we
in our
had
town.
there there, there were cool. I heard you guys were a little above corruption. No, like my
A little bit.
mom worked with um one of her coworkers, her husband worked for the cable company.
Yeah,
So he always made sure that our cable didn't get shut off because he would just shove our shut off notice to the bottom of the pile.
sure,
And then my mom also worked with a couple nurses who uh two or three were married to sheriff's deputies and two or three were married to police officers. So I was I was golden. My One of my brother's best friends, his dad was the chief of police. I
that
mean,
was no.
unless we really did something, or my mom would be like, "Yeah, you need to like, yeah, quit giving
I
a freak
mean,
past my kid." We got away with all kinds of stuff.
we had
I
one
mean,
part-time Gwinner police officer, and we had three sheriff's deputies for the entire county that I lived in, and they would show up once in a while. So we knew the cop. Everybody knew the cop, right? Everybody knew who the cop was, but there's just one guy. And the other problem too would be though that some parents, if they would see you driving, or not even parents, but other people, if they saw you driving and they knew you shouldn't be, they would call your parents and let them know. So
well,
people would try to get
oh,
away with it. Wasn't I mean, other
you
people
know,
probably tried to get away with it, but we did not get away with it.
you know
Like
what
my
the
brother and I
police,
did not get away with it.
you know what the police used to do? This happened to me quite a few times as a teenager, and this was after I had my license. But I would get followed for a couple blocks by one of the officers on patrol, and they would call in my license plate number, which of course then went on the scanner, which everybody had. And so
Yep,
that's how my mom knew where I was.
doesn't surprise me.
And everybody else in town knew where
The
where I was.
the people across the street from us had a scanner, and they if they heard my brother a few times get pulled over, and they would
Mhm.
immediately call my mom and let her know. So
Yeah,
you couldn't get away with anything,
yeah,
but like
no.
90 days get your license. So my parents made me do my license, like wait until my birthday the following year to get my license when I turned 15. And that was okay because like my dad took me out on the icy snowy roads, and he'd make me like go into a skid and pull out of a skid. Like there were all kinds of
Mm.
really helpful things he had us do so that he knew when we did go drive by ourselves, we would be as safe as a teenager could be, right? Like he knew we knew how to do it.
I just don't remember. I just don't remember much from driver's ed because I tell you what, I was already working. That was the summer I started working. And like driver's ed started at like 7:30 in the morning. And like and it was 34 years ago. So I don't
Yeah.
remember
I mean, I don't.
much.
Our driver's ed would be so. Our driver's ed was a little different. We would have classroom in the morning, and then we would have everybody would be scheduled for a couple hours of driving a couple times a week with the driver's ed
Yeah.
teacher and your partner. So that was kind of a pain, but that's how we had to do it. My parents, though, once I had my full permit and all that stuff done, because I didn't get my permit, I took driver's ed during the summer, and then I got my permit. I think the next spring when I turned 14, or maybe
Mhm.
I had it and then I took driver's ed. I honestly can't remember how the hell that worked out, but we took it, and then once we were able to get to the license part, like I said, my parents made me wait. I got my license. They did not make my brother wait when it's his turn, but I had to wait. And then once you're 15, you can have your license. Now there, we did have what was called a
Oh,
farm permit in North Dakota at the time, and you could get that when you were
mm.
12.
And I think they might have had that in Kansas at the time too. I
And
don't I
yeah, you
don't
could you could only
yeah, I
drive
don't
on the
remember.
farm. Like you could literally drive a grain truck,
Well,
and you
but
could help your
the thing
family
is
out.
it's like I mean, I knew some of the guys I grew up with. I mean, they were out there driving at age 10.
Yeah.
So maybe we ignored a lot of laws in Kansas, in rural Kansas. Like
I mean, I'm
we fo-
surprised we
we
didn't
followed the
ignore
rules.
more. I'm surprised we didn't
I,
ignore more, but you
I
could
mean,
get your farm permit. You couldn't drive to school on it. You could only drive on the farm or to the grain elevator. Like you could,
yeah. See,
because
and
a
there
lot
was
of those old
something.
grain trucks that we had on the farm back then, they topped out at 30 miles an hour. You couldn't go any
Yeah,
faster, fully loaded. That was it. And so
yeah.
like I remember even when I had my license though, I would help my uncle drive sometimes in the summer, and I would drive the grain truck in, and I'd be like 30 miles an hour. Like I could walk this faster. But um there some kids would do that. I obviously did not do that. I didn't know too many who did, because like there's still a pretty significant liability there, so people are
There,
careful.
I think a lot of that was more of an excuse
Yeah,
than anything else. And then of course it didn't help. I mean, it had nothing to do with like, people would ride four-wheelers and stuff.
yeah.
But yeah, so let me ask you this, because one thing I do remember, and I'm pretty sure the name of the movie that was supposed to scare us straight was something called like Blood Flows Red on the Highway or something,
You had to watch
where
that too.
yes.
Yeah, it was awful. Yeah, it was awful. And it didn't seem particularly believable, but it was still gross. Like it was still pretty awful.
Yeah, it was still
Did you have the little?
pretty
We
gross.
did not have the little stations, but I've seen them. Did you have the little like it was just basically a steering wheel on a console, and you sat there on a chair and you practiced with your feet and moving the
No,
shift
I
gear, the
mean,
gear shift.
he- here's how I learned, and this is what my mom did, and what my driver's ed teacher did was they're like, "Here's the car keys, T. Get behind the wheel."
Yeah. Yep. We
Um,
That's what we did. Dad would take us out into the country, and we had to practice, and that was we were doing that before we even
yeah,
took driver's ed, and
yeah.
it was
I
like
think.
you learn by doing.
I mean, I remember the very first time I ever drove a car, and we were driving on the Blacktop Road to see my grandparents, and I had
Yeah.
just turned 14. And my mom, um, and I remember this because it was pheasant season.
Oh
So it would
gosh.
have been like right before Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And so my mom just stops the car and she's like, okay, you're going to drive us to Grandpa and Grandma's house. And then she proceeded to scream at me the entire way. I remember her yelling like 10 and 2, 10 and 2. And I had no idea what she was talking about.
And they don't even do that anymore.
And then she got mad at me, because there was a pheasant across the road and I slammed on the brakes.
That's
And
what
then
we're supposed to
I
do.
was I was I was told to keep driving and not stop for a goddamn pheasant.
Oh,
Then,
okay.
but then one time,
That's
and I feel
that
terrible
sounds
about
like
this
C.
because it would have been around that very same time, and I feel bad because I don't think I killed it outright.
Oh no.
I hit a possum.
Oh my god.
Surprised if you don't slow down unless it's cattle,
That's
because you never
awful.
had a head of cow. So I didn't slow down when I hit the possum. I winged it.
Oh no. What did you mean about cattle? You don't slow down when you hit cattle? Who's hitting cattle?
No, you stop when you hit cat. I mean, you stop before you hit the cattle.
That would be good,
Everything else,
but not the
you
possum.
still. Oh,
That
what
is
I did.
not. My dad would have always been like, "Don't hit it, it's gonna make a mess on the car."
No,
Like,
I
don't hit
didn't.
anything.
But I have to finish what happened to the
We're gonna have to
possum.
take a short break for T to gather herself. She's needing
So,
to take a couple deep breaths here, and we'll be back in a second.
so anyway, mom had told me like you don't slow down for animals unless
Yeah.
it's cattle or had a cat. And so yeah, so I hit the possum and I kind of like winged it and it flew into the ditch.
Oh no.
I hell
It,
for hitting the possum instead of slowing down.
she couldn't make up her mind.
She couldn't.
That's that's
So
that's difficult. How are you
yeah,
supposed to know what to do? See, for us, it was always you don't hit anything. You don't hit potholes. You don't hit cracks if you can help it. Like you have to, because
well,
don't do anything to mess up the car was the general rule. Like you don't want blood or guts or whatever
I
on
mean,
the
I
car.
guess that was for small animals.
Hmm.
It was don't because you don't want to risk an accident.
Oh, I mean that's
Like
true, but
dodging,
also like if you're aware
like
of your
swerving.
surroundings and you know there's nobody behind you, like you brake.
Okay, well, see, nobody taught me that piece.
Oh, well, that's
Um,
good practice for driving in Chicago because you could hit anybody, but you have to be careful, right? Like
right,
there are not
but
possums on the road as often as there are people on bikes and shit, and we try really hard not to hit them, but they get in the way
but
sometimes.
I saw a dead possum in my neighborhood today, and when we were driving by, I was like, I laugh when I tell this story because the thing is that's how inconsistent my mom was with rules. But I still feel bad because had I known that I was going to hit it, I should have gone faster. So that because I feel bad because now I'm like, did it just crawl off and die in pain, or so the
Yeah,
animal lover in me is like, okay, that's not good,
yeah,
especially after the possum's gone airborne and then he keeps it's not an
skipping her.
armadillo. um
No, not really.
but just to highlight the inconsistencies of like, okay, so I can hit a pheasant but not a possum,
Don't
don't
hit a
hit a
cow.
heifer, don't hit a cow. What about deer?
No, probably not. That
So
mess up your car. I mean, so
don't hit a horse. Yeah.
that's a bad idea too. What kind of car did you have for driver's ed?
Oh man, I do not know, but I do know that it was an automatic,
Yeah, we did too.
and I did not. I did not learn how to drive a stick shift until I bought my first car, and it was a stick shift.
Oh
And then
God,
I had to learn. But my mom didn't teach me because my mom didn't know how to drive a stick.
that's probably a blessing.
Yeah.
Ours was this
So,
massive station wagon. It was some Chevy something or another station wagon. Hard as hell to park that thing. But we figured if we could do that, we could drive anything, right? That was an
mhm.
automatic. I learned how to drive a straight stick with my grandfather on the farm. So he literally would just be like, "We're gonna go move some cattle. So
Mhm.
get the Ford." And at the time, it was a 1976 Ford F-150. I remember it just because it was his pickup forever, and the stick shift in that thing, the gear shift, was taller than I was. Like it was way up to my
Oh,
head. I could barely
yeah.
see over it, and we're out in this pasture going after the cattle, right, to try to move them somewhere else. Which it was really just his way of trying to like spend some time with me and teach me how to drive the straight stick, right? I
Mhm.
spent so much time slamming in that clutch and starting that truck back up because I kept killing it every time I tried to shift it. He at some
Oh,
point was
yeah.
like, "You're gonna have to get the hang of this pretty damn quick, or we're just gonna stop." I was like, "Hey, I've never done this before." And at some point, I did get the hang of it. I haven't driven a stick in a long time, but we definitely had that. We I feel like we did 20 or 30 hours of actual driving before we could get the driver's ed certificate,
Oh, you know
and
what?
then we could take our
I think
test.
I and I remember having like a little blue card or something that um my teacher had to my instructor had to like sign off on like
Yeah, we
and
had to
they
have
and they'd been like
a
however many minutes I drove that particular
yep,
day. Yeah, I
yep.
mean that was pretty detailed. But
We had to take it to take before we could take the test. We had to take that in with us to set it up and be like, we did it. I passed it. We took it. That was the weird thing when I was teaching in Nebraska those couple of years. My high school students didn't have to do it. They didn't do it through the school. They went to a driving school, and
yeah,
then
that was always odd to me. Yeah.
that was it was weird to me. I didn't know that was a thing. But I also didn't think
Yeah,
they
I
knew
didn't
what they
either.
were doing because like those kids were horrible drivers. I mean, I'm sure we were not the best drivers when we were that age, but driver's ed was a great experience, man. I mean, all the gory shows and all that fun stuff we
You
had to
know,
watch try to scare
look
us into not being too crazy or driving and whatever.
looking back, I think 14 was too young. It really should have been 16 because I think of some of the stupid things that I got in myself into and that my friends got themselves into
Yeah.
vehicle wise simply because the your your cognitive skills aren't quite there yet, your reasoning skills aren't there, and your reflexes are not as good as people think, and your judgment is not like I have yet to meet a 14-year-old who has a good sense of judgment, myself included. And
No.
not that things are that much better at 16, but I know just thinking back about myself and like among my friends and things, it's like the majority of the stupid shit we did, car accidents we had, that was in that 14 to 16 range. And maybe some of that was the whole like new driver syndrome,
Yeah.
or hey, let's try this and see how it works. But looking back, I'm like, yeah, 14's really young.
See, I think it would have been okay if we would have just been permitted for 2 years or 1 year or whatever. Like 14 to 16, I think the license at 16 would make more sense. I think letting
Which
us
is what,
license at 14 after 90 days of driving on a permit was stupid. Like, I
yeah,
just don't think that was a good
on
idea.
but on the flip side, Kansas did what you are suggesting, and we basically all of us did what you were doing without the paperwork saying that we could.
Oh, okay.
You know, 14 be 14. I mean, a 14-year-old with access to a set of keys and knowing how to back up and move forward,
Things are going to
you know,
happen.
things are going to happen. And you're going to push any limits that are given to you. So,
Well, and now North Dakota has
um,
changed their law. So the law now is 16.
and I
So
think
they
it is
have
in
to
Kansas too.
they can't test until 16. And honestly, in Nebraska when I was teaching there, it was the same. It was 16. And some of
Well,
those
I
kids
just,
still I was like, I don't know, I don't think I want you on the road
but
with
I
me.
definitely, but I think there is a lot of, there's enough cognitive difference between 14 and 16 that makes that a wise decision.
Oh, I don't have any problem with it. I think it's
Yeah.
safer to
Yeah.
have 16 for somebody. And by that point, really, that's it would be dumb to wait longer because they're getting closer to the point where they're going to leave home anyway, right? At least at
Yeah.
16, you've got a couple years with them to offer whatever guidance you can that a 16-year-old will take. I don't know what they'll take, but at the same
Not
time,
much.
right? Like, no, not much, but there's a little bit more of that. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's just kind of driver's ed was it was exciting and it was scary. There was a girl in my driver's ed who was a couple years, well, she was a full year older than me, and her parents wouldn't let her get her license for a while. Like the boys in her family all got their permits and licenses when they were 14, but the girls were not allowed to.
No. No.
Um,
No.
and then I actually had one guy in my class. He didn't take driver's ed until we were between junior and senior year. He didn't want to learn how to drive. And finally his dad was like, "You have to be able to drive, right? Like I need you to be able to drive."
Well,
So he did.
and that's what even my sister learned how to drive.
Yeah.
Um, and my mom was kind of torn about that. But then it was when it kind of boiled down to just even like, okay, well, even if you don't ever allow her to have a license, still, if something were to happen that you were behind the wheel and she was a passenger and something happened to you, that she would at least know how to turn the ignition off or,
Put it in park. Get it
so,
out of the road
and
or get it out of the
right,
way. Yeah.
right. So, um, yeah, and then that was terrible because my mom was so disappointed because my sister had accommodations and she did pass. And my
Oh.
mom was ever so pissed because, of course, my sister was like, well, I want my driver's license now. And like, mom had already lost her permit
Oh, okay.
because, well, no, because my sister, she did get into the car once after she did driver's ed, got a wild hair, got into the car, and decided to try to take it for a spin. And praise Jeebus that mom had a different car that she hadn't trained her on. So she couldn't figure out how to back it out into the street, but she floored it and hit the garage.
Oh no.
And then that the piece of paper that said she was qualified to have a license just conveniently just disappeared
Disappeared too.
and and didn't reappear for years until after the expiration date. And but for years, my sister would be like, "When I get my driver's license, I'm going to get a big old red truck," and I'm like, "Oh, God help us all." But after a while, they had moved up here, and I remember one time she was talking, and I'm like, you know, you see how crazy everybody drives up here, and all the lanes of traffic, and the traffic gets heavy, and it's so much to pay attention to. It
Yeah.
really is stressful driving. Do you really want to drive here in town, or would you rather have mom or me or T drive you wherever you need to go? And she was like, you know, I do kind of like having you guys drive me around. Okay, good. Now shut the hell up about because over over all our dead bodies. So yeah, I mean, my mom was open to the opportunity. I don't think she appreciated the, it's. it was one of those situations just because mom wanted her to have the access and have the opportunity to learn. But then when there's so many accommodations that have to be done for her to get, like, there's no way, you know, my sister, there's
Yeah,
no way on God's green earth she would ever be safe for herself or anybody
driving.
within a 10-block radius of any given time of her being behind the wheel of something,
Hmm.
you know. And that's if she could figure it out. So
So they
that was
tried,
definitely,
but that's as good
they
as it
tried,
got.
and by God, they made sure she could get her driver's license. And mom was, I remember mom was so, oh, she was livid.
Do you want her to not pass the?
Well, she wanted her to kind of and be like, well, you know, but you took driver's ed, and that's okay, and hoping to nip it in the bud.
It didn't work.
Um, it didn't work. It didn't work.
It's kind of
So,
it's kind of funny. I have when I come back to Omaha too. I've got a at one of the clinics that I visit, the front desk person, super fun woman. She went to school in Naperville, right? So just
oh
outside of
yeah.
Chicago here,
Mhm.
and was we were talking about driving last time, and she's because she could tell I was a little frazzled when I got to the office, and she was like, traffic bad? I'm like, just Omaha bad. And she said, you know, the best I have felt in a while when I was driving was I was back in Chicago for a friend's wedding, and I was on the phone with my husband who was still back in Omaha, and I'm just zipping in and out of traffic on 290, getting onto 294. I'm downtown. I'm like, everybody's just seamlessly doing their thing, and everybody knows what they're doing. And then I get back here, and it's just a constant clusterfuck, and I'm like, that's pretty much how I feel. Like, it is
Mhm.
busy here. It's hard to drive in Chicago. It's not that bad. Like, I've gotten very used to it. I'm fine. T does most of the driving when we go somewhere together, but I drive wherever I need to when I need to. It's not a big deal. But almost everybody here knows what they're doing and how they're doing it, and everybody knows, like, you drive with a purpose. You know where you're going. You're going to get there. Get the hell out of my way, kind of situation. Whereas in Omaha, it's just sort of like nobody knows what they're doing and they don't care.
Yeah,
And they
I
don't care
wonder.
that they're going to screw up what you're doing.
I'm wondering, like with Omaha, because you know, Omaha has grown quite a bit in the past 50, 60 years.
Right.
And so a lot of these drivers, because I'm sitting here going, well, who are like the worst as far as not understanding how traffic flows and this and that? It's people who are boomers and older.
Yeah.
And I wonder if some of it is like they mentally haven't caught up with how big Omaha is now.
It is quite a bit bigger. It's
You
quite a bit
know,
bigger than when we started school.
well, that's what I'm kind of thinking. Like, um, so maybe that some of it is just some of that holdover, especially with people who have never moved out of town, that don't, they just can't conceptualize how much bigger the town is.
Yeah.
And because, like, I think about some of these things, and it's not your 25-year-old, it's not your 30-year-old. Usually, the people who are acting that way are our age or older.
Yeah.
So maybe some of that will change over time.
I
And
hope
I think
so.
even crowd, and I think sometimes even with crowds, with crowds, and you know how I lose my shit when people don't know how to queue.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah. Not a good
because
time.
yeah, it's not good. And I let both when we were at the farmers market this last time and twice now, the people who do the service, their food is excellent. Except their cannoli wasn't very good last time, so I'm done with them. But their service is lousy, but
Yeah.
people don't know how to queue, and so people butt ahead. And my husband, He's like, "Oh, well, that's all right. She can go in front of us." No, fuck her. I've been in line for 10 minutes. I've already made direct eye contact with the lady who's supposed to be serving us 5 times now. We're next. And he's always like, "Oh my God." And I'm like, "Well, do you want to eat today or not?" Because this is
Yeah.
how things go in bigger cities. If you're not going to hold your spot and let somebody tramp over you and then somebody else, no. So, because finally the individual who was serving her, she finally goes, she looks at me, she goes, "I see ya." And I go, "Good, because I've been waiting here for 15 minutes." And my
You should just
husband's just
live
like,
here. You'd fit in better here.
"Well, these people in Chicago know how to queue and they know how to move."
We try.
Except if I except if I do move there, you and T are gonna have to drive me everywhere. Like if I need wheels, you're gonna have to drive me.
I mean, you can get almost anywhere in the city by just walking a block to a bus or a train.
See, that's what I think if I moved there, I wouldn't even have a vehicle.
A lot of people
Because even if
don't.
I
Yeah, a lot of people
because
don't.
even if I did need one on the off chance, I'm like, either call you or rent a car if needed or
Yeah,
whatever.
it'd be
So,
easy. But I mean, we've got
yeah.
multiple buses, and the train is 2 blocks away. The L is 2 blocks away, so it's super easy to get pretty much anywhere. You need a little extra time because you got to get to the train or to the bus, and then to wherever you're headed. There's usually a little bit of a walk on either end, but it's not
Yeah,
much.
but I was used to that living in London and stuff, You
Yeah, this
just
is easier.
that's your commute. It's
Yep,
just part of your
it's
commute
part of your
time.
commute. Yeah. So
So
I mean, driver's ed was fun. We survived. Thankfully, they got smarter after our age group and made the age higher because they probably should have done that when we were that age. But we got lucky. We got to start when we were
we
14.
we are the reason why they changed it.
That would not surprise me in the slightest. So well, that was kind of fun to talk about. So, for our
Yeah.
listeners, throw us some comments. Let us know how your driver's ed experience went. Like, when did you start
Oh yes.
driving? Be sure to actually tell us where you are. Like, did you grow up in Florida or Texas or Arkansas or Oregon or somewhere? And then tell us, like, what age you got your permit, when you got your license, and what that experience was like. We'd love to hear that because clearly our experiences were similar but different enough that we traumatized some people and they changed some laws, which sounds about right for Gen X anyway.
Pretty much.
Yeah,
We were a cautionary tale. And then also too, everybody just let us know the worst city you've ever driven in.
that'd be nice. Let us know. That'd be kind of
Yeah,
cool.
like what's the city with the worst drivers or the
Yeah,
worst driving experience in a city you've had?
it's fantastic. Be sure to like
Yeah.
and subscribe if you haven't already. Share with your friends. Encourage them to like and subscribe. And I guess check back with us next week for something else to complain about. T, anything else for
Yes.
this one?
No, I'm good, but I do need to study up on which animals to just go ahead and run over and which animals I need to stop for.
Maybe you should just create a guide. T's guide to roadkill.
The thing is, in actuality, I will slam on my brakes for anything.
So will I.
So
That's
if it
okay.
has a heartbeat, I will stop for it because I got enough karma to burn off.
There you go. Me too.
There was probably a possum still wandering around in a ditch in rural Kansas, shaking off like the worst TBI for the past 40 years or
That's
35 years.
an old possum.
It would be an old
It would
possum.
be. Nice. All right, everybody. Have a great one. We will see you next
Yes,
time. T, it's been fun.
always a. And be good, everybody.
See ya.